Hey, good morning. No, that thumbnail is not clickbait. We have very little feed cost in our livestock throughout the dormant season. And it revolves around a plan that we kind of do throughout the year. No, we don't stand them up in the lot and give them bread and water. Actually, if we gave them bread, they'd probably do very well, but we continue rotating them through our pastures. And something a little bit special that we do is that we typically always have some pastures that we set aside and stockpile. And that helps for when you get to that dormant season and you're running low. For example, I'm standing in a pasture right now that is one of those pastures that we stockpile. It's got some fescue grass in it. It's got some switchgrass in it. It has some winter annuals in it. It has some thatch from previous years in it for a little brown. So it's a pretty balanced pasture, and they do very well on the winter in here. It just so happens it falls into place with our management because with the fescue in here, we kind of have to avoid it during the hot season because it does have some endophyte in it. So this is one of them that we use like that. And that is kind of how we get away with not feeding anything in the wintertime. Specifically, I'm talking about cattle right now. Now, one other thing that allows us to do it is that we will allow our animals to back up condition-wise. If you've watched any of our videos at all, you know that I'm constantly out here checking the feed, checking the forage, and checking the cattle to see if I feel like they need to move, to see if I feel like I've got them on the right schedule as far as rest period and how long before we get back. All of that is to manage condition. Same way in the wintertime, in the dormant season. I know that I'm not going to be able to keep the same condition on them that I can when I hit the end of May, June, July, August, September. Those are months that I can keep great condition on them. And that's because that's the way they were designed. And the goats are going to be very similar. They're going to back up a little bit in the winter, or they should. I can't really tell that they do a lot. But just based on how they were created and because they're going through a dormant season, they're going to back up. They've got to back up. But we do the same thing with them. Now, this is the first year with the goats that I've really been monitoring, what they have in front of them and their condition. And I've told y'all a couple of different times, I think I'm going to have to move them out of here early. That's because I'm monitoring that. I came back in on those goats and actually said, well, now wait a minute, it's going further than I thought it was going to, and that's mainly because we've got some winter annuals that are coming on that normally don't come on until spring. Of course, that's because of the weather we're having. We're having 70-degree weather right now. It is December. So I'm constantly adjusting that stuff. I still think I'm going to have to come out of there a little bit early. And that's okay because I've got stockpiled areas for them also. And it is specifically for goats. It's not for cattle. So we'll take a look at that. So this is an example of kind of what we have stockpiled for the goats. We've got several pastures that are like this. Now, the leaves are still on this brush. And so it works well the sooner we get to it. They will still get some good out of the leaves once they fall off, but they need to be here pretty quick. And the reason I know that is because we watch the deer, and specifically the boat trees. When they start dropping leaves, those deer will get under them like a corn feeder. So it has to have great value to them. So we're managing our goats the same way, therefore our cost in feed is very similar. And it all stems around knowing and understanding when my goats and when my cattle can lose condition. And if you look back on our videos, when we talked a lot in depth about the cattle side of it, the name of the video was, does she have to be fat all the time? And that's very important for the way we manage. The answer to that is, short answer is no. I mean, go watch the video. But the short answer is no, they don't have to be fat all the time. And the goats are the same way. They don't have to be fat all the time. And if you do that, it's very difficult. If you keep them fat all the time, it's very difficult to make a living in a commercial operation. And when I say a commercial operation, I'm talking about specifically producing babies for us, because we're a cow-calf, and then we're a nanny kids type of operation. We're not registered. We're not go purchase stockers and bring them in and make money on the weight gain. We're birthing the animals out and raising them to the point where we sell them. And it would be very difficult for us to make a living if our inputs were anywhere near the average. And the last time that I saw the average, and it's been several years ago, so I would imagine it's gone up tremendously, is somebody else that's maybe in the commercial livestock business. Maybe they know a little bit more, or maybe they've seen data from A&M or somebody like that in the last maybe 2-3 years. But the last time I saw it, it was over $800 was the cost to produce a calf. And that's going to include some overhead costs and things like that, which we still do have overhead. But I'm talking direct cost on feed. And also the last time I saw direct cost on feed for a cow-calf operation, it was around 60% of their budget. I have no idea what it might be with goats. I don't know. I would suspect it's probably not that much, but I don't know. It just depends on how people are raising them. But so for you to make money and make a living and make a ranch payment and pay your bills and have on a calf an $800 negative going in, man, that's going to be tough. I don't know how everybody does that. It just amazes me how people do that. It's just amazing. Not everybody can do this like this. If I had a 8-hour-a-day job, 5 days a week, it would be almost impossible for me to do what I do here. But this is my entire job. This is all I do. All I do is livestock. I just monitor and move. You should know that by our videos. Every now and then I'm having to fix something, but it's just, and I build some fence, but I just monitor and move. So there's trade-offs for that. It goes back to the livestock and how diverse managing the livestock is. And it's one of those things that really it's a joy thing. It brings joy to deal with animals and things. So I say it does. Sometimes it doesn't. But most of the time it does. So it's one of those things that you just got to do it the way that works best for you. But I just want to give you some ideas that may help people look at it and say, okay, now wait a minute. If I can decrease my inputs, specifically if I can decrease my feed costs, then I might be able to make something work. It might make a difference. Kind of a funny story. My dad has a friend from a different country, and he was telling him that when he first came over to the States, he was going around with a guy that was running cattle. And so he was just kind of hanging out with him, seeing how they do it here. And he stopped the truck, got in the back, pulled out this bag, and started calling the cows. And the cows came in, he opened the bag, and he started dumping these cube-looking things on the ground. And that guy was like, "What is that?" And he said, "Oh, that's cattle cubes. Yeah, we feed them that in the winter." Oh, he didn't have any idea, the guy from the other country, because they don't have access to that stuff. They had to figure out how to do it without that stuff. So I know it can be done, and it's just how we like to do it. It just eliminates the risk a lot. So I don't want anybody to think that we don't take care of our livestock in the wintertime. We spend tons of time monitoring, adjusting, moving, all of those things that we need to do to try to maintain the animal throughout the dormant season. If it gets to a point where we're not doing that, then I've got to back up and probably reduce my numbers, because I'm not able to, or I've gone through a drought, which is what we did this year, but I reduced my numbers before I got to the dormant season. And the reason I knew to do that is because I've been kind of monitoring the feed. And so, like I was saying in a previous video, we will still have enough feed to run our animals through the dormant season. Anytime I talk about this kind of stuff, especially on the channel, or if somebody's talking or asking us about it here, that have come here, for whatever reason, they always say, well, that's because you have, more country than you really need, type of thing. No, that's not the case. It doesn't matter if you have 20 feet by 20 feet, or if you have 100,000 acres. It doesn't matter. I'll just tell you, on this place, I just recently had a meeting with the NRCS, which NRCS is the National Resource Conservation Service. Anybody that has worked with them, that they're fairly conservative on their stocking rates, their recommended stocking rates for the area, but they're pretty accurate. They kind of know what they're doing with respect to that. And so while we were meeting, we were just talking about some different things that we are potentially maybe wanting to do here on the place. And one of the stipulations that they made before we could kind of do anything was they wanted us to decrease our stocking rate to make it more in line with the normal stocking rates in this area. We needed to decrease it by 60%. 60%! That's in a drought year. So it's not a function of how many acres you have. It's a function of what you're doing to manage it. That didn't even count the goats. They weren't even including the goats. Look at all this goat feed. I mean, we need more goats. That's why, everybody that's said, I want to buy some goats and I need to buy some goats. And I keep telling people, give us some more time. We're just trying to get our numbers up. We're trying to get our numbers up where we can utilize the resource. This is just, all of this is going to waste every year. There's only so many deer in the country that can eat this much. So it's not a function of I've got 100,000 acres or I've got 20 by 20 feet. It's not a function of that. It's a function of planning, managing, and deferring the feed until the dormant season. And you don't even necessarily have to defer a pasture completely, 100%. If you're rotating by going through a pasture and eating, I'm just going to throw out half because that's what a lot of people do, but let's say you did only graze half. I don't think that's the right way to graze if you're rotating, but let's say you graze half. And then you came back around and the dormant season hit. Well, guess what? You just stockpiled half of your feed on your entire 20 by 20 feet, or you're on your entire 100,000 acres. You just stockpiled half of it to last you 90 days. The other half you've been using for one rotation. So you can figure that out. But there's a lot of different ways you can stockpile feed or stockpile hay, whatever you want to call it. And a lot of the other arguments are, well, when you do that, your feed doesn't have the same value. A lot of people say it has no value. That's a lie. It has value. It absolutely has value. I'm speaking from experience. Is it going to have the same value that it had in the summer? No, it's not. So are your cattle going to back up? Are your goats going to back up? The brush doesn't have the same value? Yes, they are. Does that make is that a big problem? Is that a huge problem? They're going to back up? Not to a certain point. And if you're managing them properly and moving them, you can control that. You don't want them to back way, way up. You want them to back up just what nature would typically have them back up. So It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. It's just another way to look at it. But if you think about 60% of your livestock budget being spent on feed for the dormant season versus stockpiling some of your ranch and utilizing that for the dormant season, and okay, I'm going to have to change when I'm calving because I need to get the cows back in condition. I may need to adjust when I'm having my kids with my goats if they're not in the right condition, which that had been an issue with the goats. I told you before, the goats are just amazing. They're fertile. Doesn't matter what's going on, it seems like. So it's just amazing how the stuff works if we think back to when they were created and how they were created and what they were supposed to do. It's amazing how much easier it is to manage. So the answer to the thumbnail, yes, that's absolutely correct. We can feed our livestock during the dormant season, actual money out of our pocket that we hand to the feed store, for basically $0. The guy who makes this feed, he knew exactly what he was doing when he made it. So all we're doing is trying to utilize it the way he wants us to. And so far, it's working. But it has only been 20-something years, so I don't know, it may not work. Well, I forgot about one critical livestock that we have to feed, and it does cost us money. And really, it's by far more than anything else. Of course, I've already told you the rest of it is $0. But we completely forgot our dogs. A 50-pound bag now is about 26 bucks. So, okay, well, now that I got your mind all twisted up or I got you mad, don't get mad. I'm not saying everybody has to do that. It's just the way we do it. So thanks for watching. Leave us a comment if you have something else. And otherwise, we'll see you next time. Isn't that right, Zeke? Huh? Next time?